blank moments in life. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Good evening. To Chasing Lullabies for, and just going to stop YouTube making noises to us. So for our final session,
leave the box out. I'll go in the way. Okay. Still leave it out, yeah. Huh? Leave the box out.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our final session of Chasing Lullabies for this book of the Torah. The plan is to take a break now for the book of Devarim and restart for the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, in a couple of months' time. But I want to thank you all for joining me on this journey over the past few weeks and months. It's been very, very special. And we're here, we're chasing lullabies away. We are reading the Torah in a deeper way, in a more adult way, trying to think about what's really underneath the text, what we can access as adults at this stage of life, rather than simply seeing them as stories that we sing, Rockabye Baby on the treetop, but no longer think about. I was going to bring Jemima out for this final stage, but she's actually already gone to bed. She fell off the treetop and she's actually a casualty because whatever, she broke her head open. It's okay. She'll be fine. So what I wanted to do to begin with is throw out a question, which is, we are in the final parashiot, the final passages, the final parts of the book of Numbers of the Midbar. And in truth, this is the end of the narrative of the Jewish people from the Torah, because the next book of the Torah, the book of Devarim, is essentially Moses's final speech. It's a very long speech, it's very involved, there's lots of laws, but it's Moses's final speech. And there's nothing more to say about that. They're only a few days away from at this point, at the end of the Midbar, they're only a few days away from entering into the promised land. They're about to achieve their goal, their dream, and we will segue into the next book of the oral law, sorry, of the written law. We'll segue into the next book, into Joshua. So let me ask you like this. If there was one theme that you thought the Torah should end with, one final page, so to speak, what would it be? We've already established that the Torah is a guide to life. It is a guide to the best life, the most beautiful life, the most satisfying life, the most fulfilling life, the most self-actualized life, the most self-transcendent life. So how would you finish? What sort of a climax would you finish on? By the way, in order to temporarily unmute yourselves, I learned this recently, you can just hold down the space bar and then offer some thoughts, and then take your finger off the space bar and it will remute you, if you'd like. What big themes, what ideas would you like the Torah to end on? Sort of like the final line. The guide to life, signing off.
And all the Jews lived happily ever after.
Is that a guide to? Okay,
that'd be nice.
I'll take it. It's
Would
nice.
it be nice?
It's nice, yeah.
You know, it's an alternative version. They cut both versions in case it was leaked, and unfortunately we got the version which was just permanently riddled with exile and persecution rather than happy ending.
I like that, Simon. Do you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of someone who commented to me after the sermons that I gave at Rosh Hashanah time, and they said, I know it's nice to be sort of like challenging and deep and this and psychological and this and that and the other. So, but maybe just do stuff that makes people happy. Just like do a happily ever after. That's what people also want from a book of life, a book of the Torah. Just feel good and happy. Okay, I'll take that. Something happy.
How about follow the laws and support Joshua?
Was that Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. So that could be that we are one thing about Jewish continuity, follow the laws, support Joshua, like off you go. This is the next stage. We're setting you loose, and it's now time to have Jewish continuity. Okay, hear that? Anyone else? Some final
You look back on a life well lived.
Okay, okay, some sort of retrospective perspective. Retrospective perspective. Yes, I think that could be. That could be. Look back and quell almost on what one has achieved, what one has done. Don't just have necessarily a forward look, like Anthony is saying, but also have a. We've actually got past, present, and future in all the suggestions so far. We've got Simon's be happy, be right here, be full, be happy. We have be well. And we have Anthony's forward-looking, off you go, continuity, strive for the future. And we have Helen's retrospective approach, you know, also feel achievement, feel accomplishment in what you've done so far. I like that. Okay, let's take that. Let's see what happens, because let's actually see what happens in this week's parsha and feel and see if that gives us the sort of boost that we wanted to find. And once again, thank you to Aleph Beta for the some of the content this evening. So here's actually what we find is that the children of Machir, the son of Menashe, went to Gilead and conquered it, driving out the Amorites who were there. Moshe gave Gilead to Machir ben Menashe, and he settled in it. And one of his descendants, Yair ben Menashe, went and conquered their towns and called them the towns of Yair. Okay. That, my friends, is the climactical end for the Torah. A description of a conquest of a few lands of the Amorites by Yair ben Menashe, who went and settled in these towns of Gilead. Wow. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling the inspiration? I know I am. Are you feeling the happiness, the future, the continuity for the future, the quelling about the past? Oh, this is good. Right, this is good. Like we're all in shul and we're just overwhelmed with inspiration at this moment, the finale of the Torah. What do you think? Or no, there's something that seems to be entirely missing with this section. This section does not seem to be helping us out at all, and it really is the final words that we have on the Torah. So what on earth is going on? How do we understand what's going on with this story of Yair ben Menashe, who lives in a place called Gilead? Okay, so now we actually have a little bit of detective work to do. And for this, I have already asked our wonderful, talented and amazing family therapist, Adele Weeder, to help us draw a genogram. Because even though the Torah has presented this man, Yair, as coming from Menashe, there is a different account of his heredity. Help me out with some English, please. It's like mind blank. Simon, you were helping me before with mind blanks.
Hereditary.
Thank you very much. So there's a different account of that in the book of Chronicles, and here it is. And let's just see what differences those show. So here we have Divrei Hayamim in Chronicles, and it says the sons of Judah. Okay, so just we're going to draw a sort of a family tree called a genogram here to try and work out who this man Yair, where he comes from. So just to remember, we have this idea that Yair comes from Menashe, but let's see. So the sons of Judah, we'll start with Judah. So Judah had Er, Onan, and Shelah. So we know that Er and Onan, they died, and Shelah, well, we don't know so much about him, and Tamar, his daughter-in-law, he had an interesting encounter with her, and she bore him Peretz and Zerach, and all the sons of Judah were 5. So essentially, Judah then had 5 sons. Then Peretz, who is the primal person to be thinking about over here, so he had Chetzron and Chamon. We want to focus on Chetzron, and after Chetzron came to the daughter of Machir. Okay, so he came to the daughter of Machir. So that means that they got married. And that was the father of Gilead. And he took her, and he was 6 years old, and she bore him Seguv. Okay, so far we've got Judah, who had Peretz, who had Chetzron. Chetzron got married to the daughter of Machir, and they had a child called Seguv. And Seguv had the hero in our story called Yair. And just to go finally back up the family tree, on the other side of Machir's father was Menashe, as we saw over here in the book of Numbers. Machir was the son of Menashe, and Menashe was the son of Yosef. Okay, that is the things that we need for our genogram at the moment. Adele, how are we doing on that one?
Well, trying to keep up, yes.
Going too fast, am I? I know.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. So what can you do you feel you can share with us what you've got so far?
If I hold it up.
Yeah. So let me. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to spotlight your screen so we can all see.
Oh, okay. Of course, I don't know whether. Of course, it's back to front, isn't it?
It's okay.
Can you see it?
I can see it. Yeah. Okay. So where's the link between? Oh, so what we have to do is that we have a small flip. I love that. Thank you very much. Can we have a bit of a round of applause?
Danny's trying to turn it round. Yeah.
It's okay. So here's one I made earlier. I like it. And actually, there's a huge amount of detail there, which is beautiful. And you've got all the family there. And see, as a typical family therapist, it's not only got family, we've got gender, we've got siblings. That's perfect. So so thank you so much. I have a slightly simpler genogram over here, which shows that Yair, again, it's probably backwards, isn't it?
Oh, that's right.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, fine. So Yair is down here. Yair is the child of Seguv, and now we saw that Judah, who had Peretz, who had Chetzron, and Chetzron married the daughter of Machir. Machir, who's the son of Menashe, who's the son of Joseph. Okay, and so they have Seguv, and then they have Yair. So there's something which is quite interesting, which is, on the one hand, the book of Numbers tells us that Yair comes from the tribe of Menashe. Is Yair ben Menashe. But on the other hand, the book of Chronicles tells us an entirely different story to his genealogy. It tells us that he actually is a son of the tribe of Judah. And if you had to ask Yair, which tribe do you belong to? He might not say Menashe as is recorded in the Torah. He might in fact say that he comes from the tribe of Judah. Because why? Because tribal descent is patrilineal. And therefore his father was Seguv, whose father was Chetzron, whose father was Peretz, whose father was Judah. It wasn't Menashe. So what's going on in this story? In the story, which is the apparent climax of the entire books of Moses, the climax of the narrative of the Torah, we have an account of a man called Yair, who is mistakenly labeled as coming from the tribe of Menashe just because he had a grandmother from that tribe, who settles in a place called Gilad. And this, my friends, is the climax. What on earth is going on? So let us start to work out what this thing called Gilad, what this place called Gilad, the legacy that it leaves for the Jewish people, the legacy that actually plays its course out through from the books of Genesis all the way through to the book of Bamidbar, and how this really is possibly the most majestic finale for a book which is a guide to life. Are you ready? Great. The name Gilad, this place called Gilad, does it remind you of any other story in the Torah? Do you remember any other story that has the word, the name, the place, Gilad in it? It's quite obscure. It's quite tricky. I can give you a clue. It has to do with the story of Jacob. Anyone? I'm quite comfortable.
What was it? Was it where he, sorry, it's Francis.
Hi, Francis.
Was it where he battled with the angels going up and down the ladder?
So that was Bet El. That's a great suggestion.
That's right, yes.
But you're close, which is that it is another time that we find Jacob running somewhere. We find him fleeing. So when he was battling with the angels, that was he was fleeing. That's right. He was fleeing from someone. Actually, I'm sorry. You're right, Francis. You're right. Where's he fleeing from when he battles with the angels?
He was fleeing from, I'm getting confused now whether it was Laban.
Yeah, so he's leaving Laban. He's on the way to Esau. But if we just pull back a little bit from the time that from the encounter with Esau, and instead know that there was a point in time where he realized he needed to leave Laban's house. They were it had become uncomfortable for him to stay in that house, and so he leaves Laban. He gathers together all his family. He gathers together his wives and his children, and he goes over to the land of Gilead. So let's just have a little look at that story. A little bit more text. So Jacob and Laban, here we are. Okay, so Jacob fled with all that he had, and he arose and crossed the river, and he directed his face toward the mountain of Gilead. So this is the first time we really encountered Gilead in the Torah. We're back in the book of Genesis, in the story of Jacob. He's left Laban, he's crossing the river, he's going to the mountain of Gilead. And then we're just going to skip ahead. Now, what happened when Jacob ran away with his wives? What did Rachel take with? So Rachel took with Laban's teraphim, which some people translate as idols. Aryeh Kaplan translates as fetishes. Whatever it was some sort of idol worshipping implement. So Laban says, "And now thou art surely gone, because you saw," this is horrible English, "because you really long after your father's house. Why have you stolen my gods? Why have you stolen my teraphim?" And Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid. I've run away because I'm afraid. For I said, maybe you're going to take your daughters from me by force." So then he makes a claim: "With whomever you find your gods, he shall not live. Therefore, our brothers should discern you what is yours with me, and take it to you." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. Okay, so now there is a very dangerous statement that Jacob makes. He says, look over here in verse 32. If you find anyone who you find your gods with, lo yichye, they shall not live. They shall not live. Rashi on this verse says this is a curse. It wasn't intended, but it is a curse. The curse is that anyone who has these teraphim, these fetishes, is going to die. And we know what the story happens. We know that Rachel has taken these. And Rachel, what happens to Rachel? Rachel dies in childbirth on the way, and she's buried in Bethlehem, in that amazing, amazing place, Rachel's tomb, that we go to, and that she cried for her children on the way. But it's tragic. She dies prematurely. She dies in labor with Benjamin. And so this curse seems to play itself out in her premature death. And then we carry on in this story, and Laban went into the tents and he didn't find them, and now he enters into Rachel's tent. So now Rachel had taken the teraphim and put them in the saddle of the camel and sat upon them. And Laban felt about all the tent, and he didn't find them. She said to her father, "Don't be angry, I cannot get up because I'm having a period. So it's not comfortable for me to get off my camel." And he searched and he couldn't find the teraphim because she was sitting on them. And then after this whole business, they decide to have some sort of reconciliation. And he says, "And now come, let us make a covenant, I and thou." Laban says to Jacob, "Let's make a covenant and let it be for a witness." So what's this witness? The word in witness in Hebrew for witness is aid. The word in Hebrew for a pile of stones is a gal. So the reason that this place is called Gilead is because of gal, aid. The pile of stones that we make into a covenant between you and me is going to be testimony to the fact that we are making a covenant between Laban and Jacob. A covenant that is built on a curse that will rip away Rachel's life when she is in childbirth with Benjamin. And so this is what we see over here. And Jacob and his brethren, they gather stones and they take stones together and they make this heap. Okay, and that's why it's called Gilad. Okay, so the theory that I'd like to suggest is that this curse of Gilad, this curse that happens over here, seems to have reverberations that echo throughout the book of Genesis and actually reach their full arc in history in our Parsha as the grand finale for the Torah. But in order to prove that, I think I need to share with you some of the very, very spooky connections that this curse about Laban has to do with not only Rachel, but also other parts of Rachel's legacy. Because if Rachel is the object of the curse, then it's not just her that needs to be wiped out as a result of the curse, it's also her two sons. So we need to see Gilad rearing its head against her son Joseph and against her son Benjamin, that somehow Jacob is going to have to lose everything he holds dear from this wife that he loves so much. He's going to have to lose her, he's going to have to lose Joseph, and he's going to have to lose Benjamin. And it's going to link back to this episode. So let's start with Joseph, her firstborn son. Does Jacob ever lose Joseph? Yeah, he does. Right. Everyone's nodding their heads. He does. So let's actually see. There's some spooky parallels between the text of the story of Gilad and the text of Joseph. So let's have a look over here. In verse 32, it says, wherever you find your gods, then lo yichye neged achenu, that person won't live amongst our brothers. Haker lacha ma'imadi, recognize for yourself what is amongst us. Look at these verbs of timsah, of finding, and haker, of recognition. Finding and recognition. Finding and recognition. Have we ever heard those words before? And the answer is that we have, in a very, very disturbing and sad episode. It's the story of the brothers presenting to their father the bloodied coat of their brother Joseph, that they've ripped from him and dipped in goat blood in order to set up to pretend that he's died. So look at this, and they shalchu et, and we're looking in verse 32 over here, and they sent the coat of many colors, and they sent the coat and they brought it to their father. Okay, vayamru, and they said, Zot matzanu, this is the coat we found. Hakerna, please recognize it. Hakatolet binchahi imlo, is this the coat of your son? We found this coat, recognize it. It's the same words that were used to talk about finding the teraphim, finding the idols, recognizing where they were. That's the first similarity between the Gilad story of Laban and Jacob and the Joseph story that is leading to not only Rachel's loss but also Joseph's loss. Notice also that in finalizing the covenant between Jacob and, so we're just flipping back between the two stories, in finalizing the covenant between Jacob and Laban, they sit together and they eat. So, and Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his brethren to eat bread. Okay, so we have brothers eating together. Where else in the Torah do we have brothers eating together? So after the sale of Joseph, so after they throw Joseph into the pit, look over here, and the brothers sat down to eat bread. They sat down all together to eat bread. They sit down together to eat in the Gilad story, the story of the curse. And they sit down together when the curse is enacted as they've thrown him into the pit. But the connections go even further, because what is it that Rachel stole from her father? We said they're called teraphim, which again translated sometimes as idols, sometimes as fetishes, some sort of medium that was an inappropriate way of connecting to Hashem. Teraphim. Now that's spelled with a tough, but listen to the words, teraphim. What does that sound like? That sounds onomatopoeically like what is described as happening to Joseph. Look over here in verse 33, Vayakira, and Jacob recognized the coat of his son Joseph. Vayomer katonet bini, it is the coat of my son. Chaya ra'ah achal tahu, a wild animal ate him. Tarof Toraf Yosef. Joseph has been ripped up. Terafim, these fetishes. Tarof Taraf, he's been ripped up. The curse is coming through and ripping up his son. Not only that, but what does Rachel, where does Rachel place these terafim? So she places these terafim, it says she placed them, and Rachel lakcha et terafim. Rachel took the terafim, vatisimein bechar hagamal. She put them in the saddlebag. Here, bechar is referring to a saddlebag. She put them in the saddlebag of her camel. What word does bechar also spell? Re-vowelize that word. Re-vowelize the word bechar to say a different word.
Becha.
Becha, but a little bit more, Simon.
Bechor.
That's right, bechor. Bechor, which means?
Firstborn.
Firstborn. Firstborn. She places these terafim, these objects of curse, and she places them in the bachar hagamal, in the saddlebag of her camel. No, she places them in the firstborn. She places them in her firstborn. She is transferring the curse into her firstborn, into Joseph. And she says, look, I can't get up because I'm having a period. Essentially, she's saying, I'm sitting on some bloody rags. I'm sitting on rags that are covered in blood. It's not nice to get up. Where else do we have bloody rags? When Joseph's coat is held up, dipped in blood to his father, and I can't see you anymore. This is all I have to show. This is all I have to show right now is these rags. But perhaps the most haunting of all is there are a certain band of Ishmaelites who come along to take Joseph. And look in verse 25. Where do the Ishmaelites come from? They come from Gilad. They come from the place of curse. So the evidence seems to be stacking up that Gilad is a curse that is echoing across time, not just to take away Rachel, but also to take away Joseph. To take away Joseph from his father as well. Slight pregnant pause. What do we do with this? What do we do with this? Just to review, we've had the similarity of the language of finding and recognizing, of terafim, telling us of taraf, of being ripped apart, of bachar, of bachor, of the saddle, the firstborn, of the pile of clothes, of bloody clothes, and we've got also the link to Gilad itself, that the Ishmaelites come from Gilad. But let's uncover some more clues. And I think if we do this, we'll start to really penetrate who this person in our parsha is. Yair, the son of Menashe, who's not really a son of Menashe, who's really a grandchild through a grandmother of Menashe, but actually a grandson of Yehuda, of Judah. So let's see some more parallels, some more spooky parallels. And this time we're going to look at what Jacob says to Laban in defense, to make his point that this is not something that he would do. He wouldn't take. He was a trustworthy individual. So let's see what he says. A little bit more text. Okay. So he says over here. He says, "For you have felt about all my things." After Laban has made his search, he said, Jacob says back to him, he says, "Look, you've gone through all my belongings. You've walked through all the tents. You've told my family to go here, to go there. You've been searching throughout the whole place. What have you found? What have you found in my house? So put it here in the presence of my family and your family, and let them decide between the two of us. You've got no evidence. You have nothing to substantiate your claim that anything has been taken. And let them decide. So already 20 years have I been with you. And he says, and your ewes and your she-goats, they never miscarried. Neither have I eaten the rams of your flocks. I've never brought something torn up to you. I would suffer its loss. Meaning, if anything happened to the flock, so then I would bear the full burden of loss. From my hand, you would demand it, whether it was stolen at day or stolen at night. Okay, so let's look what he says. The first thing is, this is scary, yeah? He says, Rachelecha, your she-goats, lo shikelu. They never, or your sheep, they never miscarried. Rachelecha. What does that sound like? Rachelecha. Rachel, she never miscarried, he says. She never miscarried. You know what? I hate to say it, but if she had miscarried with Benjamin, maybe she wouldn't be dead. She never miscarried, that's right, and she died in childbirth as a result. Then he says, Terefa lo heveti elecha. I never brought you something torn up. That word torn up, again, where did we see that? Taroif, taraf. My son was surely ripped up. And the same word repeating itself. We said there was a word play with terafim. Here it's literal. I never brought you something ripped up. Notice the next one. Anochi achateno. He says, I would suffer its loss. Miyadi tevaksheno. From my hand you would demand it. Who else says exactly those same words? I will suffer its loss. It will come from me. Now, this is an interesting connection, and we're now jumping further into the sale of Joseph's story. Further down the line, when Jacob has, I'm just going to take off the screen share for a second. Jacob has lost Joseph. There's a famine in the land. He sent his sons down. They've met the masked stranger called Joseph, and they don't know he's Joseph. They don't know he's their brother. Okay, it's an amazing thing, by the way, to think that someone who's your brother, but in a different context where you don't expect him to be there. So they don't see their brother. He's speaking Egyptian, but he understands Hebrew. Anyway, so they're there, and Joseph takes away Shimon and says, unless you can substantiate your claim that there is another brother to your family, so then you're not going to get your brother back, you're not going to get any food. And he sends them back to Canaan, and there is a hesitance on the part of Jacob to send Benjamin down, because now Benjamin is the last child of Rachel. Okay, he's lost Rachel, he's lost Joseph, and now he's being asked to part with Benjamin, the last connection to this woman who he loved, who he fell in love with, his soul was deeply connected to. He doesn't have he doesn't have their firstborn anymore. All he has is Benjamin. And Judah says to him, eventually, he says, I will guarantee that your son will come back. Why? Because I'll put myself in harm's way rather than lose Benjamin. And look at the language, look at the words he uses in order to make that claim. Over here in verse 9, he says, with whomsoever of your servants it will be found. No, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Okay, I don't have that text over here. I'll read it to you instead. It says, Anochi a'arvenu miyadi tivakshenu. I will guarantee him, from my hand you can demand him. Once again, look what Jacob said to Laban, Anochi achatena, I will guarantee him, I bore the loss. Miyadi tivakshenu, from my hands you can request it. Says Judah to his father when he wants to guarantee Benjamin, Miyadi tivakshenu, from my hands you can guarantee it. So the contexts are entirely different. Here, Jacob is promising that nothing came from him, that he didn't lose, he didn't give over his son. Over there, Judah is promising that he's going to stand up and he's going to not allow Benjamin to be taken. Instead, he's going to offer himself in exchange. It's a different context, but it's the same language, it's the same story, it's the same loss. And now it's not just the loss of Joseph, it's the loss of Benjamin. We're now touching the full depth of this curse where we're losing Benjamin as well. Look at the end of this verse over here in verse 39. Gunavti yom u gunavti laila. When I was working for you, Jacob says to Laban, I didn't sleep, I didn't eat. My days were entirely devoted to you. It was stolen at day, it was stolen at light. Everything was given over to you. Where else do we have a time where we have a double expression of ganav, of thievery? That it was, when it was stolen by day, stolen by night. Where else do we have a double expression of gunav? So it's actually when Joseph himself is in prison in Egypt, and he describes what happens. He says, "Ki gunov gunavti," because I was stolen, me eretz ha'ivrim, from the land of the Hebrews. I was stolen from them. Again, why is he in prison? He's in prison because he's been sent away, because he's been sold. Another echo of this curse falling out in the sale of Joseph's story. But remember, Joseph has another brother. There's another expression of this curse. So we're now building the curse even further. Let's look at this text over here. We're further along in the story of Joseph's sale. Joseph is in Egypt. He's taken Shimon. The brothers have gone back. They brought Benjamin back down to Egypt. And now they've packed up all their bags. They sat down together to eat. They packed up all their bags, and Joseph has hidden his goblet in Benjamin's pack. And they leave Egypt and they go far across. And then there are Joseph's servants and Joseph's warriors. They chase after the brothers and they pull down the packs and they search and they say, you have taken one of our things. You've taken the cup. Well, by the way, just already you can hear an echo. They're running away from another person. There is a stolen item, right? What does that remind you of? The Jacob and Laban story, that Rachel has taken the teraphim and they're running away, and there are people chasing after them, searching for the stolen item. It's like the story is repeating itself over again. So here's the verses. The story of Gilad should be just ringing in our ears. Let's read. And when they were gone out of the city, I'm not yet far off, Joseph said to his steward, let's go, run after these men, and when you catch up with them, say to them, why did you repay my kindness with such evil? Is not this it in which my Lord drinks, and whereby he indeed divineth? I don't know how to say that. He does his divining. You've done evil in so doing. And he overtook them and he spoke to these words. And they said to him, whatever says my Lord, why are you saying these things? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. They're protesting against this claim. Who else? When else did we hear people protesting against the claim of thievery? Behold, the money which we found in our sacks, well, we brought back to you out of the land of Canaan. And then we're going to steal from you after we brought back the money that you freely gave us? Whoever has this goblet, let him die, and we will also be servants to you. Whoever has your goblet, let him die. What's that claim? That's exactly the claim that was made by Jacob to Laban. Whoever has your teraphim, they shall surely not live. By the way, we don't even have to go into the last part. When Joseph's servants say, why do you repay my kindness with such evil? It's the same language, it's the same idea that Laban uses. He says, why do you repay my kindness of having offered you a home, offering you children, offering you my daughters, right? And he took his brethren. So this is we're going back to the Laban story over here. And so that he runs out, he pursues Jacob. And so too over here, they are pursued when they run away from Joseph. Now, by the way, Joseph has almost taken on the position in the story of Laban. Joseph is masquerading as Laban, as the curse of Gilad has transformed him into the villain by removing Benjamin from his father. Okay, so what else do we see? And the Vayaseg, and they catch up with them. So we see over here in verse 25, Vayaseg Lavan, Laban catches up with Benjamin. Where else? Laban catches up with Jacob. So over here also there's a sense of catching up with them. They've been caught up with. V'hisagtam, it's the same word. And then there's the protestation. Why have you left us after, and how do you repay such kindness that I've done to you? Why have you done this, says Laban? You have outwitted me and carried away my daughters, with that you fled away secretly and outwitted me. Have I not given you all these things? It's all happening again. Gilad is happening again. It's the same story. And we already said that there was that parallel. Whoever has the goblet, let them die. Whoever has the teraphim, let them die. Now, not only that, but when Laban came, he went into different people's tents. So he went into different people's tents. First, where is it? I'm going to have to go to another. First, he went into, sorry.
Rachel's tent first.
That's right. Well, first he went into Jacob's tent, then into Leah's tent, then into the tent of the two maid servants, and didn't find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and he went into Rachel's tent. Okay, so there's an order to the search. He's gone from the oldest child, Leah, and he's gone to the youngest child, Rachel. Okay, what order does Joseph's henchmen go in when they are searching for the cup? So the order that they go in is it goes from the oldest to the youngest, but I've just lost my place, so 1 second. Here we are, 31, 33. No, I don't have it. I'm sorry. So it goes in the same order, and I'll read you the verse. He starts with the oldest and he goes to the youngest. When Laban was searching for it, he went from Leah, the oldest, to Rachel, the youngest. When Joseph's searching for it, he goes from the oldest to the youngest. Okay, I think I've made the case. We've made the case. Aleph Beta has helped us make the case for Gilad, the curse of Gilad, playing itself out and almost ripping apart everything that Joseph holds dear. But there's a change to the ending of this story. You see, he lost Rachel and he lost Joseph, and he's about to lose Benjamin. And Joseph has become so twisted on some level that he's even taken on the role of Laban. And all this happened, by the way, because there was another brother who lost sight of what it meant to be a brother, who betrayed his younger brother, Joseph, who was the ringleader, the mastermind for throwing him in a pit, for selling him off, for framing his death at the hands of a wild animal. Who was this brother? Who was the brother that masterminded the sale of Joseph? That's right, it was Yehuda, it was Judah. Judah was the one that suggested, let's not leave him in the pit, let's sell him to these Ishmaelites from Gilad, from this place. Because Reuben had run away and was about to come back that night to save his brother from the pit, right? Reuben had said, okay, let these younger brothers, they need to get it out of their system. We'll leave him in the pit. I'm going to come back and I'll save him. And in the meantime, Judah has sold Joseph. Judah has sold Joseph. And there's a lot of jealousy for Judah, because whose mum is Judah? Judah's mum is not Rachel. Judah's mum is Leah. Okay, so Judah is the fourth son of Leah. And he feels quite keenly the exclusion from his father's love. He feels that his mother is slighted. He feels that his brother is given favor over him and his brothers simply because of this enamored relationship that Jacob had with Rachel. And he does something at the end of this story that is remarkable. When Joseph stands up and says, I'm going to take Benjamin too, Judah stands in the way and says no. He's already guaranteed this to his father, but look what he says to this masked stranger, this despot in Egypt, who he doesn't know is actually his brother. He says, our father said, go back, buy us a little food. But we said we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us, we will go down, because we know that you, the masked stranger, you despot in Egypt, you require that the youngest brother has to go down. For we cannot see the man's face if our youngest brother is not with us. It's going to be, he's going to kill us if Benjamin's not with us. And your servant, my father, said to us. So now Judah is recalling what Jacob said to the masked stranger, to Joseph. He doesn't know it's Joseph. He said, you know that my wife bore me 2 children. Listen to these words that Jacob says to Judah. He says, you know, my wife bore me 2 children. If you're Judah, how does that make you feel? Like a piece of garbage. My wife? You've got 2 wives. You've got my mother. He bore me 2 children. Am I not your child? But this is what he recalls. He says, I'm putting aside all my feeling today, all my hurt, all my pain. I'm putting aside all that history because I have to prioritize one person. I have to prioritize my father's love. My father only had 1 wife. He only had Rachel. He didn't have my mother. My father only had 2 children. He didn't have me and my brothers. He only had Joseph and Benjamin. And he recalls that accurately from that perspective. And he continues in verse 28, the one went away from me, and I said, he's surely been torn to pieces, and I've not seen him since. And he recalls the loss of Joseph and the grief that his father felt. Now, if you take this 1-2 away from me, if you take away Benjamin and misfortune befalls him, you will bring down my hoary head in misery to the grave. I'm going to be so broken, I will die. We already know, actually, that following the loss of Joseph, Jacob fell into such a low mood, such a depression, that he was unable to communicate prophetically with God. And the finale of this speech, of Judah's speech, is, so now please, let your servant stay instead of the boy as a slave to my lord. Let me, Judah, I'll stay instead of Benjamin, and let Benjamin go back with his brothers. Judah is changing the ending. Judah is breaking the curse. Because what happens after Judah has made this statement, Joseph cannot stay impartial anymore. When he understands that Judah is willing to fully connect, to fully mend what happened in the past, that even though Judah was the mastermind of the downfall of his father, even though Judah was the one to bring Jacob to his knees into a depression that was so low that no one could lift him out of it, even though he was that mastermind, he's willing to actually sacrifice his whole life to reinstate Benjamin back to his father, to just give his father a little bit more joy. Take me instead, says Judah. And so Joseph reveals himself. The brothers are reconciled, and the sale of Joseph saga ends. Joseph returns and sees his father. His father, now Jacob, is surrounded by all his sons at the end of his life. Prophecy returns. And so now we come full circle. The legacy of Gilad is finally broken. As brother meets brother, they embrace and they apologize and repair. And so we come to the end of the book of Numbers with a man called Yair, who settles in a place called Gilad. A man called Yair, whose grandmother is from the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh, who comes from Yosef, from Joseph, but who really comes from the tribe of Judah, who's really, in terms of his father's family, father, is a great-grandchild of Judah. And he claims this town of Gilad. Judah the scion of Judah claims the town of Gilead in the name of Menashe, in the name of Joseph. And so you want to know what the finale, the grand finale of the Torah is. The grand finale of the Torah is that after 40 years in the desert, after all they've been through, it's brother taking care of brother. It's the end of the ghost of Gilead, as finally Joseph and Judah can come together and live back in that moment as one. So the Torah really is a guide to life. You want to know how to end the narrative section of the guide to life? It's to say like this. And this is now how I see it. Life is messy. Life is full of some of the greatest hurts and greatest pains that we can find. And I don't think anywhere hurts quite as much as when it comes to family. Family is the most beautiful, the most sweet, the greatest place for joy. But on the flip side, family is the place where the greatest pain can be felt. Don't we all find this when we can be so happy, so go lucky, so kind of footloose and fancy free with friends, but when we come home, when we speak to spouses, to children, to parents, to brothers, to sisters, there's so much history, there's so much investment, there's so much that goes in there that, again, it can be so rich, but it can be so painful. You want to know what the guide to life finishes with? The guide to life finishes with a reconciliation of family, of love triumphing over hate, of ego being pushed aside for the sake of the relationship, of that enduring, that being the lasting gal-aid, the lasting stone of testimony, that rather than the curse of splitting people apart, there's the blessing of bringing people back together. My friends, thank you so much for spending these past few months and weeks chasing away the lullabies. I think this has been a marvelous journey. I'm looking forward to so many more.
Thank you.
Questions and comments?
Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Koya.
Joy. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.